There is a slice of Trump voters who are very conflicted about the idea of electing a convicted criminal president of the United States. And so you have to say it.
I think it's really effective for people like me to take back the word patriot from these insurrectionists.
Welcome to Political Experts React, where we break down political ads and media, explain what the people behind them are trying to accomplish, and decide whether or not they did a good job. I'm Dan Pfeiffer, former communications director for Barack Obama. Joining me today is CNN senior political commentator and former Republican Congressman Adam Kinzinger. This episode of Political Experts React is brought to you by ZBiotics, your first drink for a better tomorrow. Congressman, welcome to Political Experts React. It is so great to have you. You have been a top request from our viewers for months now, so it's very excited to have you here.
Well, that's good to hear. Thanks for having me. I enjoy being here.
We've been really thinking about this election in terms of the persuadable voter universe. People like yourself, people who were Republicans in good standing before Donald Trump. We wanted to look at some ads today that are targeting some of those voters, right? Voters who are upset by how Trump conducted himself, about January 6th, etc. So we're going to start with an ad from the Biden campaign.
In the courtroom, we see Donald Trump for who he is. He's been convicted of 34 felonies, found liable for sexual assault, and he committed financial fraud. Meanwhile, Joe Biden's been working, lowering healthcare costs and making big corporations pay their fair share. This election is between a convicted criminal who's only out for himself and a president who's fighting for your family.
I'm Joe Biden, and I approve this message.
This ad came out just only a couple weeks after the verdict itself. What do you think about the ad and the decision to use the term convicted criminal in an advertisement?
I think it's important. Look, we've seen in the numbers so far that this issue has really moved some people a little bit. I think the great thing about that ad is not just reminding people that he's a convicted felon. That's important. But they add the sexual assault stuff in there and the financial fraud. We get very focused on, what he did with the payoff and all that kind of stuff. But people forget that he was found liable for rape, for sexual assault, and of course, repeated financial fraud. So I think it's really effective. Is it going to sway a bajillion people? Probably not. But if it sways a few, that's what matters.
There is nothing that is going to sway a bajillion people, right? We've learned this lesson over and over again since 2016. Not January 6th, not the Access Hollywood tape, not handling the pandemic, not injecting bleach. Things are move on the margins. And it does show in the polling that there is a slice of Trump voters who are very conflicted about the idea of electing a convicted criminal president of the United States. And so you have to say it. You have to tell the story, right? And so using that term makes sense. The other thing I like about it is, like Democrats, we've really been sort of struggling with, and we have been now for almost a decade, which is, every time I say that, kind of makes me sick to my stomach, because we are 9 years this month from Trump coming down that escalator, which means I've been talking and podcasting about Donald Trump for a decade, which makes me question all my life choices. No, I know. Yeah. It's hard. We've struggled with understanding his appeal and understanding what voters don't care about, right? There's that sort of famous Clinton campaign ad of the little girl watching Trump being a giant asshole on television. And most people don't care about that. But the message that is in this ad, and you're hearing more from the Biden folks, is that Trump cares about himself. That's why he's running. And that is an essential truth, right? That is obvious to people.
If you think about what's an appeal to a Republican, it's this: Donald Trump is tough, right? Even though he's a complete liar, he's not actually tough. He's actually a weak, whiny, small, victim-y, belly-aching man who was president of the United States for 4 years, and yet still the deep state was after him. Like, he was so powerless that this deep state. And so I think reminding people that he doesn't care about you is an important thing to push back on. For, again, that 15 to 20% of, we'll just call them Haley voters for shorthand, even though she's going the wrong way. Consider, like, old school Republican, still believes in things like law and order, still generally trusts the justice system. Maybe 80% of Republicans don't, but of those 20%, they will see this case and say, he was guilty. Now, I think it's okay to say, just like with Hunter Biden, these two people may not have been prosecuted if they were just, Joe Schmo. But when they were prosecuted, were they guilty? Yes. Prosecutors every day make a decision whether or not to bring a case or not. Doesn't make them less guilty.
A huge mistake my party makes is that when we talk about Trump in these scary dictatorial terms, we are imbuing him with strength. It's very appealing to a lot of voters. And the way you beat a strong man is to expose their weakness. The difference between Donald Trump 2016 and Donald Trump 2020 is that in 2016, Donald Trump was an asshole for you. I'm going to go in there. I'm going to fight for you. The grievance was on behalf of the American people. Obviously, there was a lot of his own stuff in there, but that was sort of the takeaway a lot of people had. By 2020, it was all about himself, right? They're trying to get back to that 2016 message. There was a story in the Washington Post today about that. That's a huge part of their debate strategy, is to get back to that 16 anti-establishment message. And the way to undercut that is to tell people that Trump's about himself.
The best thing going for Democrats is that Donald Trump will be completely unable to stop talking about grievances. He can't control himself. So I think that's going to be important. And by the way, quick aside, you said, Democrats have struggled at messaging for 10 years. It's funny, when I was in, I always felt like Democrats were out messaging us. But I will tell you now, I actually think the Republicans are good because they've just basically made a decision to be unmoored to truth. You can't compete with unmoored to truth if you're going to be moored to truth. That's a tough thing to compete with.
Okay, real quick. If you like this video series and you like Pod Save America, I am 100% confident that you will also like my Substack newsletter, The Message Box, where I don't just look at political ads, I break down polls, campaign strategies, and give you advice for the conversations you're going to have with the people in your life who are still deciding who they're going to vote for in this election. If you want to subscribe to The Message Box, the link is in the show description. The next ad we're going to watch is from Securing American Greatness. It's a pro-Trump group, and this is their pitch to this same group of voters.
President Biden created an inflation nightmare, then dismissed families' worries.
Inflation rate month to month was just just an inch. Hardly at all.
Hardly at all? After years of Biden's policies, prices are still rising. Housing, mortgage rates, up. Energy prices soaring. But Biden claims he's lowering costs. Is it dishonesty or dementia? Either way, to fix inflation, Biden has to admit it's bad. Tell President Biden, admit inflation's bad and stop making it worse.
What do you think of this ad?
Look, I wish I could say it's not effective. I think it's effective. I think the real problem for Democrats is they use Joe Biden's own words. There's a lot of us that are lucky enough to not really be crippled by high inflation. And what I worry about is that the Democrats have to do a better job of admitting, inflation's tough. Keep in mind, it's not just, 4% year over year. This is compounding, right? It's compounding rates. I'm not sure this is going to move the needle much because, again, almost with everything, including this stuff is just baked in the cake. And I think, frankly, the 20% Haley voters, they're probably not the ones that are super hit by inflation at this moment. They're probably usually a little wealthier. But yeah, generally, I think it's an effective message for Republicans.
Yeah, I've seen some testing of this ad, and it's quite effective. Inflation is the number one issue for all groups of voters, right? I think you are right that the college-educated, more well-off Haley voters who vote in Republican primaries, they're less sensitive to the price of eggs and gas than more working-class, middle-class voters. But that's what people care about. They say it all the time. And I think some of Biden's earlier mistakes in how he talked about the economy are coming back to haunt him because no one knows what inflation is, right? Inflation is a rate of growth. And when the rate of growth comes down, prices are still high. And you have to talk about prices. Now, one way to do this, and I think you're right, is to put on Donald Trump for his policies in the past, but also how Donald Trump would make it worse. He is going to enact tariffs on all imports, which would increase costs for the average American family by $1,000. He is going to cut taxes for the rich and pay for it by cutting Social Security, Medicare, spiking up the deficit, which will also cause interest rates and inflation to go up. And so there's a way to go on offense here, but this ad is sadly effective. I don't know that they need to do the dementia thing in there. I think that's in every Trump MAGA Super PAC ad, there's this one thing that's like one tick over the line that they just can't help themselves. And I think that's in there. But the inflation message is pretty effective, I think.
You made a great point with the tariffs. So Donald Trump is basically endorsing a national sales tax. So there is nothing wrong with saying Donald Trump's policies would increase off the bat cost of groceries, cost of whatever. But if you make $50,000 a year and you go buy a ham, let's use ham, because we always use eggs, and you go buy a ham, it's going to have that increased cost. But if a gajillionaire buys a ham, that's like nothing to them. So I think hitting him with this regressive, protect the rich, regressive tax policy, this is something that even I as a Republican am really concerned about, is this idea that there is a massive wealth gap in this country that I don't think is going anywhere. And Donald Trump would only exacerbate that.
I think the shorthand for this is lower taxes for himself, higher prices for you. Right?
Yeah,
That's basically what he's advocating. All right, people, I'm here to tell you about a game-changing product I used before a night out with drinks. It's called ZBiotics. ZBiotics pre-alcohol probiotic drink is the world's first genetically engineered probiotic. It was invented by PhD scientists to tackle rough mornings after drinking. Here's how it works. When you drink, alcohol gets converted into a toxic byproduct in the gut. It's this byproduct, not dehydration, that's to blame for your rough next day. ZBiotics produces an enzyme to break this byproduct down. Just remember to make ZBiotics your first drink of the night. Drink responsibly, and you'll feel your best tomorrow. We have the presidential debate between Joe Biden and Donald Trump coming up. I'm going to tell you something. There's not a chance in hell I'm going to do that debate without a cocktail, or 2, or 3. Under all scenarios, I'm starting with my ZBiotics. So go to ZBiotics.com/experts to get 15% off your first order when you use experts at checkout. ZBiotics is backed with a 100% money-back guarantee. So if you're unsatisfied for any reason, they'll refund your money, no questions asked. Thanks to ZBiotics for sponsoring this video and for our good times. Okay, the last ad we're going to watch is also from the Biden campaign.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America.
In America, we pledge allegiance to one flag.
And to the republic for which it stands.
Not this flag. This one.
One nation.
Under God.
Indivisible. With liberty and justice for all.
I'm Joe Biden, and I approve this message.
This is a very powerful ad. What do you think?
I love this ad. Now,
I thought you might.
I can't sit here and tell you that this is going to move huge numbers. I don't know. I can tell you how it hits me. One of the things that people believe in the GOP is that Democrats hate America or they're not patriots. You know, and actually that whole thing has swapped, by the way. Now the Republicans are the one that are always apologizing for America. Donald Trump says it, a third world country, like, for God's sakes. So I think to lean into the patriotism, right? To take back the word patriot from these insurrectionists and to show the flag and say, we're proud to be Americans, we're proud of this country. I think it's really effective for people like me. And again, it's leaning into what is perceived as a weakness of the Democrats, which is I've gotten to know you all better. It's not really a thing in the Democrats, but that's the perception. So I think leaning forward in that we love America, we're all about America is really powerful.
I could not agree more. I think this is a great ad. I think Democrats should be trying to obviously reclaim patriotism, but also claim freedom. Republican efforts to restrict freedom, from abortion to contraception, to the books you read, to who you marry, who you love, what kind of health care your children can get, is a core way to define this election for MAGA Republicans like Trump and all the way down the ballot. You know, we have so many of these voters who are unhappy with both Biden and Trump. They don't like this choice. They're not excited about it. It's going to be hard to get them to motivated. And so we're going to have more success, in my view, making this election about something bigger like freedom and patriotism than we are making them feel a lot better about Joe Biden or a lot worse about Donald Trump. Just raising the stakes about something bigger than either of these candidates, and freedom is the way to do it.
And I think leaning into a strong military, I think leaning into Ukraine. It's only the craziest people that actually want Russia to win. There's too many of them, but it's only the craziest people. Taking back that narrative that Republicans try to say, which is we're the real patriots. And even if you could add in there, and I don't know how best to do this, but the difference between we support our military versus the insurrectionist wearing military clothing at January 6th.
And what is ultimately true about Joe Biden, about why he is running, that connects his domestic policy and his foreign policy, is about a fight for democracy and freedom. And you can't just run around saying, I'm going to save democracy, because for so many cynical Americans, that is endorsing a political system that they feel has not helped them. But freedom is something that matters to lots of people. And the other thing that I like about this ad, I think it's essential for Democrats, is we can't let Donald Trump memory hole January 6th. You know, I thought about this when you were on that dais during the January 6th commission, the video footage we saw, the interviews just like brought you back to that moment on that day and how we all felt when many of your former Republican colleagues are ready to toss Donald Trump overboard. And we have to do everything we can to make sure that when people go to make their decision in a few months, that January 6th is in their mind. And so keeping those images front and center, I think, is absolutely essential for Biden.
What we can't get into the trap of is letting them, because their narrative is like January 6th was 2 years ago. We don't really know who did it, that kind of stuff. They know this is a vulnerability because they are doing their best to rewrite history, because there is no party and no politician that can claim to be for law and order like they claim to be that supported that. So those images, and even just watching that commercial, I'm glad you mentioned that, because even watching it, I just felt that like visceral anger about that day come back when you see these people with Trump flags and military uniforms, and as a Christian singing hymns, in the Senate. It's to me, it's offensive to everything about my life that I've ever held dear.
And that's a great place to leave it. Congressman, thank you so much for joining us on Political Experts React. It was great to talk to you.
Yeah, great. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for watching these ads and videos with us. If you have anything you'd like us to break down, let us know in the comments. See you all next time.